Is 2025 the year horror comedies reign supreme? They're off to a hot start. What's going on, guys? Welcome to my review of The Monkey, the latest film out of Neon from writer and director Osgood Perkins. Now, I've been looking forward to this movie from the second it was announced without even knowing a sliver of what the plot or premise was going to be, and that is simply because of Oz Perkins and how much of a fan I have become of his.
I'm so excited!
Now, I was a little late to his work. I didn't see his directorial debut, The Black Coat's Daughter, until a few years after its release, and honestly, when I saw it, I found it pretty underwhelming. I didn't think it was that interesting of a movie. I thought it was pretty boring and dull and really forgettable, and I kind of honestly forgot about it the second I finished it. So he wasn't even a guy that I kind of put on my radar to see what was going to be going on in his career moving forward, because like I said, the movie was so underwhelming. But that all changed last year when we got Longlegs. I absolutely loved Longlegs. I think it was a perfect 10 out of 10 movie. I saw it multiple times in theaters, and each time I saw it, I liked it more than the previous. I recommended it to anybody that I possibly could, and that's the movie that really opened my eyes to make me realize the kind of genius that Osgood Perkins is and the potential he has to be one of the greats in this genre. And it makes sense that he would have such a knack for horror, because it's literally in his DNA. If you do not know, he is the son of Anthony Perkins, who's most notable for playing Norman Bates in the classic Psycho, as well as its sequels. And so, yeah, if you have that in your heritage, then it makes sense that if you get into the genre as well, you probably got some potential in you. Now, as I mentioned, I had zero idea about what this movie was going to be about, but the basic premise here is that you have this toy monkey, even though they don't like you calling it a toy, that gets handed down to these twin boys by their now absent father, and they quickly discover that it is no toy. When you crank the key on the back of this monkey, it starts to play and beat these drums, and when that happens at random, somebody dies in very brutal and over-the-top fashion. It's essentially a more comedic version of a Final Destination movie, but instead of death itself coming for people, it's a musical monkey.
You serious?
There's no question that Osgood Perkins is going to deliver an interesting and unique concept, but does he deliver on the high expectations that I had set for this movie, and was this the follow-up to Longlegs that I had hoped for? Let's get into the review. So starting with the positives, and just to get right to it and answer that question, yes, this movie absolutely delivered. I had a ton of fun with it, and fun isn't exactly the word I thought I would be using to describe this movie going in, but it became very quickly evident that this is a complete tonal shift compared to any other movie in Osgood Perkins' filmography, and that's really what I want to commend him for the most here. Coming off of a movie that was as unnerving as Longlegs was, I didn't expect to be getting a full-blown horror comedy next, but that's exactly what we got on this one, and it felt like Oz really kind of flexed and showed us his versatility with this one. I'm a fan of kind of the awkward, offbeat style of humor this movie utilizes, and I think it implements it really well throughout the entire runtime. I especially liked a lot of the comedic writing for the character of the mother, played by Tatiana Maslany. And the rest of the cast here was really entertaining as well. I thought Theo James as the lead was really funny and enjoyable to watch. There's also some fun cameos that pop up throughout this movie. I won't say who any of them are, just so you can discover them for yourselves, but when you see them, I think it'll get a laugh out of you just seeing some of the actors that pop up here. But as this movie progresses, the source of where your laughs will be coming from strays further from dialogue and more comes from the absolutely brutal and unhinged death scenes that are in this movie. The death scenes in this movie are so audacious that it gets to a point where you are seeing these awful things happen to people, and you may feel somewhere in you that you should be disturbed by what you're seeing, but it is so cartoonish and over the top and just hilarious, you cannot help but laugh your ass off. Unless you have a weak stomach, you might not be laughing, you might be busy burying your head in your popcorn bucket.
Carnage candy.
Yeah, the gore in this movie is abundant, so if that's something that is kind of hard for you sometimes, maybe sit this one out, but if blood and guts is your thing, this is definitely the movie for you. Moving on to the mix, in this portion of the review, without getting into too many details, we're going to deal a little bit with the story here, but don't worry, it's still going to be completely spoiler free, so you don't have anything to worry about. So the whole first act of this movie takes place when our main character is a child, and they do this really cool A Christmas Story style storytelling where they have Theo James, the adult actor, kind of narrate what the events that's going on when they were children. And I have a lot of nostalgia for movies that do that. Think of like Sandlot, Stand By Me. And so I adored this section of the movie so much. And unfortunately, once it kind of transitioned to them being adults and it did the time jump, I found myself missing watching them as kids because I just liked the vibe that the movie had set, and I kind of was hoping to continue to go down that road. And once the movie ended, part of me was like, man, what would that movie have been like if the entire movie was set while they were children? Because I was thoroughly entertained during that portion of the movie. Not to say that I didn't enjoy the rest of the movie when they got older. Obviously, I am very positive on this movie. It's just that I think the first act of the movie when they were children, it ended much sooner than I was ready for it to. And like I said, once the movie ended, I was just like, man, I'm kind of interested in seeing what the rest of that movie would have been like if it had just stayed where they were at when they were kids, because that was when the jokes were at their funniest. The kills had already kind of started, so it still had that aspect of the movie, and I think the kid actors were really entertaining. And so yeah, because of just the way it was done, I was kind of wondering if they kept going this way, would I like this movie more? But that's why this is in the mixed section of the review, because I don't know for certain that this movie that doesn't, or the version of this movie that I'm talking about, it doesn't exist. I can't know for certain that I would like that version of the movie more than this version of the movie. So I'm just going to throw it in the mix. It's not really damaging my review towards the movie. It's just a thought I had once the credits rolled. But yeah, it's more of a testament to how much I enjoyed the first half of the movie, but it's in no way to knock down or say I did not enjoy the rest of the movie. Moving on to the negatives now, and there is one thing that kind of really disappointed me about this movie, and that is the choice to use predominantly CGI for all the gore. I'm someone who is always championing the use of practical special effects when it comes to movies, especially in the horror genre. I think horror needs to be as practical as possible in terms of the special effects, and really when horror movies tend to rely on CGI for their blood and gore, it's oftentimes very poorly done, and when that is the case, it's very distracting. It's not really effective at all, and unfortunately that is to some degree what I experienced with this movie. Now, at least to my eyes, it doesn't seem like the entirety of all the blood and gore in this movie is CGI. It definitely seems like there is also a mix of practical in there, but as the movie progresses, it feels like that the practical started to get pushed aside and the CGI really started to take over. And I don't know what happened. I don't know if the budget got thin towards the latter part of this movie, but in the third act, the CGI does not look good at all, and it is very distracting and very clear. It almost looks unfinished, and it was just an eyesore to look at. Now, I'm not saying that CGI has no place in horror. It can definitely be an effective tool, but when I say that if it's done poorly, it can be a distraction, that's what it was in this movie. That third act, like I said, the budget must have ran thin. They must have blown through it shooting all the rest of the scenes, because it was laughably bad. And for most of the movie I was laughing with it, but in the third act, at some of the gore moments, I was laughing at it because it was just so ugly looking, and that was really disappointing to see. Right before the credits roll, there's this moment where this thing that's kind of been referenced multiple times throughout the movie appears, and it looked so bad. And honestly, when it popped on the screen, I kind of had a stink face of like, what is that? And I think it was an example that people tend to have when they make these film adaptations of Stephen King works, is that there's some things that Stephen King writes on the page that just don't translate well to the screen. And I think this was a thing that maybe Osgood could have, omitted from the movie version of this short story, because yeah, what it shows right before the credits roll in that scene was just an eyesore and a black eye on the ending of this movie, because yeah, it did not look good at all.
Oh, fuck.
Now, if this is something that doesn't affect your viewing experience, that's great. This is just my personal opinion. I'm just very passionate about keeping practical effects alive in movies, especially in the horror genre. And so when I see a movie that uses as much CGI as this movie does, and have as many moments where the CGI just flat out does not look good as this movie does, that's going to weigh on my review maybe more than it does on you. So yeah, it's just my opinion. It's just a part of movie making that I'm passionate about, but it may mean nothing to you, and you may be able to look completely past it when you are watching this movie. Now, I know I just kind of ranted about something I didn't like about this movie, but make no mistake, I was still a really big fan of The Monkey. And I think moving forward, if Osgood Perkins can continue to deliver movies that stand out as much as this and Longlegs did, then And though it is big shoes to fill, I think in the end he could be standing right there with his father in terms of icons of the horror genre. For the score, I'm feeling an 8 out of 10. Though it has some ugly CGI moments, I don't think that's enough to disparage me from recommending this movie to anybody. I still really enjoyed it. It was a very fun and unique experience. I think it's a movie that is worth your time and money, so go check it out in theaters. And when you do, come back here, get in the comments, tell me what you thought about it down below. Make sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. I would definitely appreciate it. I'll see you guys in the next review. Peace.